This happened just a few days ago. I'm Emily, a 34-year-old geology professor. I lead a small team into a newly found cave in the Appalachian Mountains. I thought it would be a regular research trip, just like any other. But now, I keep thinking about how wrong it felt, how I shouldn't have gone in there. When we arrived, the cave entrance made me shiver. The air was damp and heavy. I dismissed it, thinking that was just the woods. We set up camp outside, and as we prepared, I kept hearing drops of water echoing from somewhere deep inside. Something felt off, like the darkness was alive, watching us. Maybe I was being paranoid. The next day we went deeper. My team found strange symbols on the walls, swirling shapes I'd never seen before. My heart raced when I saw their faces go pale. They said they felt like eyes were following us. I thought maybe they were just being dramatic. But deep down, I felt it too. As we ventured further in, the markings grew more complex. The whispers echoed around us, but nobody was near enough to whisper. I felt like the cave was shifting, twisting my sense of direction. I was scared, but I didn't want to show it. I led the way, forcing myself to push deeper. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. I heard scratching sounds, something scuttling around just out of sight. One of my team members woke up screaming about shadows and flashes of light. I thought it was just stress, but when I looked around, I saw fear in their eyes like never before. The next day we tried to rationalize everything. The markings were probably ancient. We convinced ourselves they were just old drawings. But deep inside, we all felt something was very wrong. I felt a weight in the air, thick and suffocating. Each shadow seemed darker than before. Every time I turned my head, my heart raced a little more. As we tried to study the markings again, I suddenly felt something brush against my back. I spun around, but there was nothing there. It was so empty. I wanted to scream, but I forced myself to stay calm. I turned back to my team, but I saw something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow darted deeper into the darkness. Panic rose in my chest. I didn't know what to say. I thought maybe it was a trick of the light, but it felt so real. The unease amplified as we pushed ourselves to keep moving forward. "We need to find a way out," I said, but the words felt strange on my tongue. As we continued, I realized I didn't know where we were anymore. The cave seemed endless, like it was mocking us. I caught glimpses of movement again, flickering past the edges of my vision. I heard low whispers that twisted my stomach. They grew louder, but I couldn't make out any words. Then in an instant, I felt a chill run down my spine. Every instinct told me we needed to get out. But the cave was swallowing our cries, and I knew we weren't the only ones down there. I turned to my team, and the shadows seemed to close in around us. I caught my breath, ready to scream, but before I could, I realized one of my team members was missing. I took a shaky step back, heart racing as I whispered, "Where did she go?" I felt my throat tighten as the realization sunk in. My eyes darted among my team. Panic began to swell. "Where's Sarah?" I demanded, my voice trembling. She had been right beside me just moments ago. We had been studying that strange symbol when I'd turned to check on the others. "Maybe she went to the entrance," one of my colleagues suggested, but the nervous shake in her voice told me she didn't believe it. It didn't feel like a simple separation. The shadows seemed to whisper around us, taunting us with their secrets. "We should go back," another team member said, his voice shaky. I felt the same urge, but stepping out deeper into the cave didn't feel safe anymore. I took a breath to steady myself, trying to recall the path we had taken. "Okay, let's retrace our steps," I replied, though doubt flickered in my mind. As we made our way back, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. I glanced over my shoulder again, expecting to see Sarah back there, but the darkness held only uncertainty. Each step felt heavier, the air grew thicker, and my heart pounded in my chest. We reached the last marker where we'd seen Sarah. The symbol on the wall glowed faintly in our headlamps, but now it felt sinister. as if it had shifted since we last looked at it. I touched the wall lightly, feeling a shiver crawl up my spine. "She must have taken another tunnel," I said, uncertainty lacing my words. "We can't split up. We need to stick together." So we continued forward, desperately hoping to find her. Each turn in the passage made the shadows feel even more alive. I could hear breathing that wasn't mine, rustling somewhere just out of sight. "I don't like this," one of my colleagues murmured, echoing my own fear. Then, without warning, lights began to flicker, illuminating the path ahead and then plunging us back into darkness. I squinted, trying to adjust my eyes, but my heart raced as I stumbled forward. There should have been no power down here, yet the lights flickered again, each one a heartbeat, pulsing alongside the fear that gripped me. "That's not possible," I whispered, but my team members shared cautious glances. I felt a strong urge to run, but I couldn't leave them behind. "Stay close," I managed, forcing a steadiness into my tone. As we ventured deeper, the whispers grew louder, swirling around us until they formed a cacophony of chaos. Then suddenly I heard it, a distressed cry echoing from further in. "Sarah!" I shouted almost instinctively, my voice piercing through the din. "Emily!" came a faint reply, distant and muffled. My heart surged with hope, but underneath it lay dread. Had something pulled her into the darkness? We rushed toward the sound, adrenaline pushing us onward. When we reached a larger chamber, the air felt colder, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. I scanned the space, but it was shrouded in shadow. "Sarah?" I called out again. The echoes mocked my efforts, fading into silence that felt foreboding. That's when I saw it, a silhouette moving in the corner of the chamber, distinct yet blurry. A shiver skittered down my spine. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. Whatever it was watching us, and I knew we had to decide quickly, stay and confront the darkness, or run back into the labyrinth of tunnels. I took a step back, my heart pounding. The silhouette shifted, but I couldn't make out any details. I felt the others close behind me, their breaths shaky and quickening. "Do you see that?" I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "They're probably just shadows," one of my colleagues said, but it felt like a shaky excuse. These shadows looked too real, too deliberate. The chamber was feeling smaller, the air thicker, and I could feel a pressure building in my chest. "Sarah!" I called out again, desperate for an answer, for some sign she was okay. The only response was silence, cold and ominous. In that moment, the silhouette took a step forward. I instinctively raised my headlamp, illuminating the area slightly, and it flickered back to life, enough to reveal something almost human in shape, but cloaked in darkness. It felt wrong, like a mirage rather than a presence. "Run!" I urged my team, instinct finally kicking in. As we turned, the whispers crescendoed, rising as if the very walls were closing in. I glanced back just as the figure moved again, coming closer. No longer just a shadow, it looked almost like it had a face that made my skin crawl. "Go, go!" I shouted. We sprinted towards the entrance, driven by primal fear. My mind raced. Where was Sarah? What was that thing? I had to focus on the path, navigating the twists and turns despite the darkness. The echoes of our footsteps rang hollow, an unsettling reminder of the isolation surrounding us. Then we stumbled into a smaller tunnel, walls barely wide enough for us to fit through. "This should lead us back," I said, but doubt gnawed at me. The way felt wrong, too dark, too narrow. I could hear the whisperings follow us, growing frantic, almost as if something didn't want us to escape. Suddenly I heard a loud crash behind us, like something heavy had fallen or been thrown against the wall. We froze, my heart in my throat. "What was that?" someone gasped, but I had no answer. I could see the fear mirrored in my teammates' eyes. "Keep moving," I insisted, although dread clawed at my insides. Every instinct screamed for us to run faster, but the tunnel felt like it was squeezing in around us. The sounds echoed again, closer now, and my legs propelled me faster as my mind raced with thoughts of Sarah trapped or worse. We finally reached a fork in the passage. One direction seemed a little less dark, maybe leading up. The other, an inky abyss. The whispers grew louder still, a frantic chorus urging us to choose. "This way!" I shouted, pointing toward the smaller passage that beckoned faintly. As we hurried down the path, I caught a shimmer of light just ahead. My heart leapt. Were we close to the exit, or was it a cruel trick of the cave? There was no time to think further, but someone groaned behind me, the sound heavy with despair. I spun around, and that's when everything went dark. My headlamp flickered and died, plunging us into an oppressive blackness. "Emily?" I heard one voice call, shaky and uncertain. "What's happening?" Panic surged through me as I held my breath, feeling the weight of the cave close in. I couldn't let it end like this. "Stay together!" I shouted into the void. We needed to find a way out, but in this darkness, the uncertainty felt more menacing than ever. The silence felt suffocating in the pitch-black tunnel, and my heart raced as I waited for a response. "Please," I urged, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Is everyone okay?" The darkness swallowed my words, and for a moment I thought we might be completely alone. Then I heard a low whimper from my right. "Emily?" I instinctively reached out, desperate to find her. "Over here," she answered, her voice trembling. I moved towards the sound, my hands brushing the rough stone walls. They felt cold and unyielding against my fingertips, adding to the growing dread. Every breath echoed back at us, twisting the air around us into something thick and suffocating. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the tunnel, and I felt an unseen force brush past me. I paused. "Did you feel that?" I asked, but nobody replied. "Quick!" I urged, gripping Emily's hand. "Let's keep moving!" We hurried forward, guided by a sliver of hope that lay ahead. But the whispers returned, swarming around us, growing louder and more chaotic. "Shut up!" I shouted into the void, frustration spilling over into fear. It was as if the cave itself was mocking us, feeding on our panic. Time felt distorted in that darkness. Each second stretched out, filled with dread. We stumbled into an opening, and my hand grazed something solid, bookshelves. My heart raced as the strange noise subsided, but a sudden chill ran down my spine. "Do you see that?" Emily whispered, her voice quaking. I squinted into the dimness, and just as the cold light from my headlamp flickered back to life, something caught my eye. In the corner of the room stood a pile of ancient artifacts, their surfaces coated in dust. Among them, a small cracked mirror glimmered faintly. Hesitantly, I approached it, the unease buzzing in my bones. As I crouched closer, the whispers faded momentarily, replaced by a relentless scratching noise. I jerked around, scanning the dark corners of the room. Were we truly alone? The mirror pulled at my focus, and I reached out to touch its surface. That's when I saw it. Reflected faintly within the glass was a distorted image of someone, their face shrouded. With a gasp, I stumbled back, and the scratching grew louder, echoing against the stone walls. "Get away from that!" Emily hissed, pulling me back. But the attraction was overwhelming, drawing me closer. Just as I took another step, the room itself trembled with a low growl. "Something's here!" a voice shouted from behind us, and I spun around. Panic seeped back in, but Emma's face was pale, eyes wide with terror. "What do we do?" she whispered. I didn't have the answer. The scratching was now a frenzied clawing, and chills ran down my spine. Backing away, I felt the weight of unseen eyes on me. "We need to find a way out," I shouted. Just then, the ground beneath us shifted. Something moved in the shadows, and a low growl echoed in response. From the darkness, a piercing set of eyes fixed on us, bright and unblinking. "Run!" I yelled, my instincts screaming for us to escape. As we scrambled back towards the tunnel, the memory of the mirror and that haunting face burned in my mind. What had it shown me? And what was lurking in that room? I could only hope we wouldn't find out. We bolted back the way we came, adrenaline surging through my veins. The echo of our hurried footsteps filled the tunnel, each thud a reminder that we were being hunted. I could hear the growling resonate behind us, closer with every passing moment. "Faster!" Emily shouted, her breath ragged. I tightened my grip on her hand, pulling her along as I focused on the narrow path ahead. The air felt heavier, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my ankle. I stumbled and fell, my knee colliding with the cold, hard ground. "Help!" I gasped, the panic threatening to swallow me whole. Emily turned back, eyes wide with fear. "Get up! We have to go!" She reached down, tugging on my arm. I tried to rise, but a wave of dizziness crashed over me. The world spun, dark patches creeping into my vision. Something moved in the corner of my eye. I glanced back, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure creeping closer, its form merging with the darkness. A flicker of the mirror's reflection ripped through my mind. Was that what I had seen? That haunting, twisted face? "Run!" I yelled again, and with one last surge of determination I forced myself to my feet. Pain washed over me, but fear drove me forward. We raced back into the larger cavern, the glimmer of the mirror creeping back into focus. The air shifted again, thick and charged, as if something was forming from the shadows. I could almost feel the energy crackling around us. "What is that?" Emma squeaked, pointing. Just then, a distant rumble echoed, shaking the stone walls as dust fell from above. A loud crash sounded from the direction we had fled. I glanced toward the tunnel we had just exited. "We can't go back there," I cried, heat flooding my chest. "We have to find another way." To our left, a break in the wall revealed a passage so dark it seemed to swallow the faint light from our headlamps. "This way," I urging Emily to follow. We squeezed through the gap, and instantly the air felt different, cool against my flushed skin. I turned around, hesitant. The sounds of the growling had faded, replaced by an eerie silence. I caught my breath, but my heart still pounded in my chest. Inside the new tunnel, the walls were lined with strange inscriptions, carved deep into the stone. "What does that say?" Emily asked, shining her headlamp toward the markings. "I don't know," I replied, stepping closer to read them through the wavering light. As I translated the strange symbols in my mind, they felt familiar yet alien, stirring a sense of dread deep inside me. Suddenly, a sharp squeal pierced the stillness, echoing off the walls. I jumped back, my heart racing again. From the shadows, something small darted out, a rat, its eyes gleaming in the dark. "That's it?" Emily chuckled nervously, trying to mask her fear. But then the whispers began again, swirling around us like a windstorm. The cave seemed alive, resonating with our panic. I glanced around, and the inscriptions on the walls began to shimmer, each symbol lighting up in sequence as if answering the chaos. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. The ground shook slightly as if in response to my question. Emily's expression faltered. "I think we need to get out, now." But just as we turned to leave, the whispering stopped. So did our hearts. Everything froze, then exploded into sound. A changeling figure materialized before us, its face, distorted and unrecognizable, emerged from the shadows. "Stay back!" I shouted, but the figure stepped closer. My mind raced. I didn't know if we could fight it or if running would do any good. With one last, desperate look at Emily, I took a step back, remembering the mirror, the image haunting me still. What had we awakened? The figure stood before us, flickering in and out like a broken light. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, filled with a deep, unsettling hunger. I could barely breathe as my heart hammered in my chest. "Move!" I whispered fiercely to Emily, but my feet felt glued to the ground. The shadow seemed to sense our fear. It twisted and morphed, becoming even more terrifying as it approached. "Do you see it?" Emily's voice trembled. "What is it?" "I don't know," I managed to choke out. trying to shake off the paralysis that gripped me. I wanted to run, to break free from this nightmare, but the oppressive weight of the shadow held me back. In an instant the creature lunged at us, its form expanding, twisting into a vortex of darkness. "Run!" I shouted, finally breaking free from my frozen state. We turned and sprinted deeper into the tunnel, the sound of our frantic footsteps echoing against the walls. The whispers returned, more intense, wrapping around me like tendrils, taunting and mocking. "It feels like it knows us," I gasped, panic rising. Through the corner of my eye, I could see the symbols flickering again, almost like a pulse matching my racing heart. Suddenly the tunnel split into two paths. I skidded to a halt, glancing back, terrified the shadow would emerge at any moment. "Which way?" I panted, both directions equally dark and foreboding. "Left!" Emily yelled, her voice breaking as if she sensed the growing darkness behind us. I grabbed her hand once more, and we dashed down the left corridor, barely pausing to catch our breath. It felt cooler here, but the air was still thick with tension. The darkness pressed in, more oppressive than before. I could feel the weight of the shadow lurking, waiting for us to make a mistake. Emily let out a sudden gasp. "Look!" She pointed upward, and I followed her gaze. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like toothy jaws, and I realized some carried strange glowing stones embedded within them. They illuminated the space with an eerie light, revealing more of the intricate symbols plastered along the walls. "Those look like the ones from before," I said, scanning the glowing markings. "Maybe they're warnings. Or—" Emily hesitated. "Maybe they're a way to fight it." Before I could respond, a low growl resonated behind us, growing louder and closer. My instincts kicked in. "We have to move now," I urged, leading her forward. The glow from the stones flickered ominously, as if warning us of the impending danger. We stumbled into a larger chamber, and the sight froze me in my tracks. The space was filled with ancient drawings, depicting twisted figures, much like the creature pursuing us. They were buried in distress, and that primal fear surged through me again. "What is this place?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible in the stillness. But before I could answer, another rumble echoed through the chamber, a deep crack running across the floor. "It's collapsing!" I shouted, grabbing her arm. As we darted across the chamber, the shadow surged into view, its shape shifting with rage. "No!" I screamed, knowing we couldn't be trapped here. The whispers grew louder, warning us, pleading us to comprehend what lay ahead. "Over there!" Emily pointed to a small crevice in the wall. "It might lead us out." Without thinking, we headed for it. The shadow lunged again, and I felt its cold breath behind me. Just as we reached the crevice, I glanced back. The creature halted, its distorted face twisted in frustration. In that moment I felt a wave of understanding wash over me, something about the symbols. They were a key. "Emily, if we can activate them somehow, maybe we can stop it. This isn't just a way out, it's a challenge." "Do you think it will work?" she asked, panic lacing her words. "I have to try," I replied, realizing we couldn't let fear anchor us. Just as we turned toward the gleaming symbols, the shadows writhed, threatening to consume us both. "Go!" I yelled, determination flooding my voice. "I'll hold it off!" Then everything went dark. I surfaced from the darkness, gasping for air. The familiar weight of fear pressed down on me again. I was still in the tunnel, but somehow I felt different. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear my mind. The shadows slipped away, leaving a faint hum of whispers behind, a distant echo of what had just occurred. "Emily!" I called out, panic twisting in my gut. I stumbled forward, my senses straining to pick up any sign of her. The air felt thick with tension, and every rustle made my heart jump. "Here! I'm over here!" Emily's voice came from further down the tunnel. Relief flooded through me as I hurried toward her. She was crouched beside one of the glowing symbols, tracing her fingers along its surface. "I think I figured something out," she said breathlessly. "These symbols, they're like a map. They're connected to each other." "A map?" I echoed, glancing at the intricate shapes etched into the stone. To what? I don't know, but look. She pointed to a grouping of shapes that glowed more brightly than the others. We need to connect them, somehow. It could be a way to trap the shadow. Before I could respond, the temperature in the tunnel dropped. A chill crept up my spine, signaling danger from behind us. The growl returned, deeper this time, rumbling through the walls. "It's coming!" I shouted, pulling Emily to her feet. "We have to hurry!" We climbed up to the nearest glowing symbol, both of us desperately trying to recall the drawings from the chamber. The symbols connected like veins through the darkness, pulsing with a faint light. I could feel it. The rhythm echoed my heartbeat, a race against time. "Can you remember where to touch?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with fear. "I think so," I replied, trying to recall the details. I pressed my palm against the glowing symbol, and a jolt of energy surged through me, sending a shockwave of light spiraling down the tunnel. The shadow screeched, and I saw it twisting, collapsing in on itself. "Keep going," I shouted, moving to the next symbol. I felt the heat of its presence creeping closer, as if it were a predator stalking its prey. With every symbol we touched, the light brightened, illuminating the darkness around us. The whispers, once mocking, grew excited. "You can do it! You're almost there!" they urged, echoing as if from the very walls. Suddenly, I felt something pull at me from the shadows, a sharp claw of fear gripping my heart. "Emily, hurry!" I yelled, panic clawing at my throat. I could sense the creature fighting against whatever force we were wielding, resisting the light. "I'm trying," she gasped, moving to the last symbol, "but it won't stay lit." That's when I saw it out of the corner of my eye. A figure emerged from the dark corridor, a faint, ethereal outline that glimmered with the same glow as the symbols. It was humanoid but twisted, and I couldn't tell if it was friend or foe. "Who? What is that?" I stammered, heart racing. "I don't know," Emily cried, fear splintering her voice. As the figure advanced, the shadows shifted, revealing a horrific face distorted in sorrow. A sense of desperation filled the air as it lifted its hand toward us, reaching. And in that moment, I realized, there was more to the symbols than we understood. No longer did I feel only fear. Now an urgency gripped my chest, an understanding that we were not alone in this darkness. "Emily, we have to trust it," I shouted, hoping against hope that we were making the right choice as I stepped forward. The figure paused, its outstretched hand trembling. I could see sorrow flickering in its eyes. Then the ground shook beneath us, and everything began to shatter. The past was colliding with the present, and we were on the brink of an unimaginable truth. This wasn't just a cave. This was a doorway. Darkness closed in instantly as the ground trembled violently. I staggered, grasping for something solid, while Emily clutched my arm. The air filled with a cacophony of whispers, growing in intensity. The shadow roared, drowning them out, its sound echoing like thunder. "Hold on!" I screamed, pulling Emily back as the figure flickered and dissolved into the shadows. The symbols around us pulsed erratically, some dimming while others flared brighter, competing for our attention. "Are we going to get crushed?" Emily shouted, panic rising in her voice. "No, look!" I pointed at the symbols that were glowing stronger, almost as if they were calling out for us to reach them. I had a strange feeling that we needed to align with whatever was happening. With each pulse of the symbols, the shadows recoiled, reluctant to approach the light. "It's scared of them," I realized aloud. "We can use this." Emily nodded, her expression hungry with determination. I steadied myself and dashed toward the closest glowing shape that shone with an intense blue hue. My fingers hovered above it, but doubt flickered. What if this was a trick? I was terrified. We could easily become engulfed in darkness. But the growl of the shadow sounded like a death knell, forcing me to act. I pressed my palm against the symbol, feeling the energy surge through me. A bright beam burst forth, illuminating the tunnel like a beacon. The light pushed back against the encroaching shadows. I glanced back at Emily. "Do the next one." She stumbled forward, her desperation matching my own. "I don't know." She hesitated, panic clouding her face. "Just trust it." My words echoed down the corridor as I moved to the next glowing shape. I grasped it with both hands. I didn't know if we were actually doing anything, but the flames of light kept growing brighter. With every connection we made, I felt my anxiety begin to morph into something. Was it strength? A surge of hope swelled within me. Suddenly, a new sensation emerged in the air. It wasn't just fear or anger. It was something else, something twisted. I turned to see a pair of glowing eyes watching us from the far end of the tunnel, dark and filled with malicious intent. "Emily, we have to be quick," I shouted, glancing back. I felt as if time was running out. With frantic fingers, she rushed to another symbol, pressing down hard. The light swelled, the tunnel seemed to vibrate, and I felt the ground beneath me crack. But the figure reappeared. Its face now more defined, its sorrow morphing into an expression that swallowed my resolve. "You must not break the connection," it whispered, words threaded with urgency and despair. Questions flooded my mind. Who was it? What did it mean? But I had no time to ponder. The shadow loomed closer, a mass of swirling darkness. "We can't give up," I yelled, finding strength in Emily's presence. "There's still hope." Just as I opened my mouth to shout again, the earth beneath us began to split apart. I felt a sharp tug on my soul, dragging me down, tearing me away as if to pull me into the void. Everything went dark, but I knew somehow that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I tumbled into the void, the darkness wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. For a brief moment there was nothing. Just a weightless sensation that defied time and space. Then, as abruptly as it began, I slammed back into the ground. I gasped, heart racing, and blinked my eyes open. The world around me gradually came into focus, a vast cavern lit by an eerie glow. My body ached, but I managed to push myself up. Emily lay a few feet away, also stirring. "Emily!" I called, scrambling toward her. Relief washed over me when I saw her blink and sit up. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but I noticed her face was pale, fear etched into her features. "What just happened?" she asked, glancing around. The cavern was immense, with jagged rocks and strange formations all around us. The air crackled with energy, a reminder of the light we had just summoned. I looked for the symbols, but they were gone, leaving only the oppressive darkness behind. The whispers were muted here, more like echoes, as if the cave itself held its breath. "Where did that shadow go?" I murmured, dread creeping back into my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd entered a deeper part of whatever this place was, and it felt wrong. Suddenly, the glowing eyes I had seen earlier reappeared in the shadows across the cave, now accompanied by a low rumble that echoed through the space. My heart raced. Not again. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Emily's arm and pulling her in the opposite direction. We sprinted deeper into the cavern, our footsteps ringing hollow against the stone floor. As we turned a corner, we stumbled upon a series of carvings etched into the rock. They depicted strange figures and scenes, a cycle of creation and destruction, light battling shadow. I wasn't sure what it meant, but the symbols felt eerily familiar, reminding me of the ones we had encountered before. "Do you think these mean something?" Emily asked, trying to catch her breath. "Maybe they're a warning," I replied, studying the images. "We have to figure out how to use them, like we did before." The growl behind us grew louder, and I turned to see the shadow darkening the cave, morphing and swirling. The figure emerged, more tangible now, rage and despair etched onto its face. "Why can't you leave?" it bellowed, voice shaking the very ground we stood on. My instinct told me to run, but as fear gripped me, I noticed something odd about the cavern. A pulsating light began to emerge from the carvings, casting a faint glow that pushed against the encroaching darkness. "Emily," I whispered, my pulse quickening. What if we need to connect with these like we did before? Before I could stop her, Emily stepped closer to the carvings, hands trembling as she reached out. "This has to work," she murmured. The moment her fingers brushed against the rock, the entire cavern erupted in light. The shadow recoiled, screeching as the brightness surged, pushing against its malice. But in that moment, I realized something. This shadow wasn't just an enemy. It felt familiar. "Wait!" I yelled, as a surge of heat radiated from the wall. A thought pierced through my panic. What if it's trying to warn us? I couldn't tell if my words were real or just desperation. But time was running out. I could feel the shadow closing in, its rage palpable. Then everything went dark again. But this time, I was determined to uncover the truth. When the darkness began to fade, I opened my eyes to a scene that felt both eerily familiar and entirely foreign. We were no longer in the cavern, nor the twisting tunnels of the cave. The air was lighter, infused with the sense of the forest outside. I blinked in confusion, my heart pounding as I looked around. "Emily!" I gasped, searching desperately for her. I found her sitting on the ground beside me, eyes wide with disbelief. She looked just as relieved as I felt. "I thought we were lost," she finished, her voice thick with emotion. For a moment, we both sat there, the weight of recent terror heavy between us, overshadowed by an almost surreal calm. "Did we make it out?" I asked, half hopeful. I could see the trees surrounding us, sunlight filtering through the leaves, illuminating the ground like a warm embrace, but something felt wrong. The echoes of the shadows lingered in my mind. I think so," Emily replied slowly. "But where are we?" I stood up, brushing off the dirt from my clothes. The sounds of the forest were comforting, yet they felt far removed from the chaos we had just endured. "This is the entrance," I said, pointing down a slope where the mouth of the cave lay hidden behind a thicket of trees. It looked as it always had, but now it felt like a distant memory, a portal to something darker. As we approached the entrance, I turned back to look at the woods stretching behind us. A nagging sense of unease gnawed at my gut. "What about the shadow?" I whispered, nearly afraid to voice the question. Emily glanced nervously back towards the cave. "It didn't follow us out," she murmured. But the shadow's chilling presence clung to my thoughts, swirling like the whispers that echoed in my mind. "But it's been there for centuries. Surely it can't just vanish." "We need to report this," I suggested, almost on reflex. Our research was supposed to shed light on ancient histories. What if we had stumbled into something beyond our understanding? "But we need to be careful. They won't believe us." Emily nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. "They'll want proof, and we can't even explain what happened." I wanted to believe we were safe, that we'd left the shadows behind, but an uneasiness lingered. What if the darkness was still in the cave, waiting, leeching off the fear of unwitting explorers like us? As we reached the edge of the thicket, ready to step back into the world beyond the cave, I hesitated, glancing back one last time. The shadows coiled at the entrance, a fleeting glimpse of dark tendrils drifting like smoke. I shivered. It was as if the cave itself acknowledged our escape. A door left ajar. "Emily," I called softly, "what if we're not done?" "I don't know." She shook her head, her expression serious. "But we have each other. We can figure this out together." With that determination, we stepped forward. Walking away from the cave, I felt 1,000 uncertainties swirling in my mind, questions without answers. Had we really escaped, or merely postponed an inevitable confrontation? I glanced at Emily and saw the fear mirrored in her eyes. I also saw resolve. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it. But as we departed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows would follow us, always watching, always waiting, even if we never fully understood what we had encountered in that labyrinthine darkness. I stepped into the warmth of the sun. I was free, yet imprisoned by lingering questions. Maybe one day I'd return to face the cave once more. But for now, I simply walked away, the haunting echo of whispers still shining through the echo of my memories.